The reading today from Exodus, as is very evident, concerns the Ten Commandments. Here God speaks to Moses in direct and unambiguous terms. For example, you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a graven image. I am the Lord your God. And so the passage goes on. The Ten Commandments represent a black and white authoritarian system. At its basis were the Ten Commandments. The whole system owes its life, its beginnings, to the statements of the Ten Commandments. This was a system which was applied by God to the nation of Israel. And the rules the Israelites lived under had some distinct features. Of course, the way the Ten Commandments were written and given was part of that. But the rules were specific. They were easily understood. They did not require scholastic interpretation. They do not create doubt or moral dilemma because they are so clear. They are facts to be recognised, these facts given to Moses. They are facts to be recognised. They do not involve feelings or emotions in order to understand what they mean. The people had feelings. The people, as we do, lived with emotions. But to understand the Ten Commandments, the rules under which they lived, needed no such sophistication as we see, perhaps in the world of academia. That would be an example. This way of life was the precursor and the description to the situation we see in Judea, Perea, Galilee. These are the main Jewish states. What pertained to regulate those places in the time of Christ. Life was governed by rules, rules taken from the Scriptures, interpreted and embellished by the scribes, administered by the scribes and the Pharisees and the priests. It's a whole structure, formalised, centuries old. There is the temple, usually in a high place. Like the churches, of course, we see here, when the colony was established, if you look in Victoria Park or Mount Hawthorn, or Midland Junction, or Cottesloe, where are the Church of England churches? In a high place. And because this colony was established in 1829, the same year that Catholics in Britain and in the Empire were given permission to worship publicly, they rushed in and got quite a few of the high places as well. And so here we see, symbolised by the temple, easily seen, the structure of its officers, easily seen and well known. This rule of law was there. This rule of law was easy to understand. It needed no feeling or emotion to enable it to function. Follow the rules. Jesus' parable of the householder in the vineyard is different from all of this. Perseverance and compassion were shown by the householder to his tenants. He did not send to punish them, but continued to send his people to try and get the tenants to do the right thing. Then he sent his son when that failed, when many of his people had been killed. He sent his son to try and regain his property and to give those tenants greater chances to redeem themselves and behave in better ways. Let's think about the tenants for a minute. What can we say about them? They lacked understanding of a few things. They lacked understanding of both the perseverance of the householder and what their continued bad behaviour meant for them. They lived in this kind of bubble. We're here and we do what we like. Here come the servants of our landlord. We will fix them up. They did not connect the householder's perseverance with any thoughts of his patience, his forbearance, his kindness, or of the right way to act. Although they did not follow the law, they thought like the law. In this way, that actions stood alone, with no connection to feelings or to people, because their actions were not to be praised. This was all very pragmatic, black and white. Maybe they said to themselves or to each other, let's get away with what we can. We can get away with it, let's do it. They had no understanding of what was going on with their landlord. They probably thought, though, that in the end the householder would ultimately judge them and punish them if he could. The idea would have been to postpone that time, or perhaps try and avoid it altogether. Don't we sometimes, in our church and in our lives, postpone in our thoughts or postpone in our actions the things we know should consume us and be consumed by other things which are not the things of God? In that way, at times we can all be like those tenants and ignore the realities of the ways of God. What can we say about the householder? He sought to forgive. He yearned for his tenants to mend their ways. He sent his son to maximise the tenants' opportunities to make a new start. That's what he was sending his servants and his son for. Forget about all of this. All this stuff you're doing, all this stuff you've done, I can forgive you for that. Make a new start. Because he felt compassion for the people under his household. We are the people under the household of God. He feels compassion for us. He sends his son into our ways and into our lives so that we can make a new start. We ask God to help us, to help others to make a new start in the name of Jesus. So we see a new approach now of thinking, feeling, reasoning, instinctive, compassionate approach to human life. This parable speaks to us God's offer of life to his created people by the gift of the Messiah. The householder's attitude is groundbreaking, ethical, compassionate, redemptive. However, it also speaks to us of an ethical approach to our partnership with God, as he is ethical towards us. Christian ethics, big long subject. Volumes and volumes, religious encyclopedias devoted to that one. And then there are ethics outside of the Christian realm. It has been said that to possess Christian ethics, we need to take on something that is called and referred to in the scriptures as the mind of Christ. To take on the mind of Christ. This involves obedience, service, and humility, which we know all dwell in the mind of Christ, for that is part of the man he is. Codes of ethics, what are they like? What are they about? I've had a lot to do with hospital work. I say they are about morals and standards, values and responses, knowing and acting, of lasting ideas and lasting practices. They pertain to callings and professions. They regulate behaviour with aspects greater than rules, greater than regulations, and greater even than statutes. People in many walks of life have codes of ethics written for them. Doctors and nurses, lawyers, clergy, lay preachers and leaders. In fact, here we have the Code of Ethics and Ministry Practice for Ministers in the Uniting Church of Australia. And it has got 14 pages in it. Then we have the Code of Ethics and Ministry Practice for lay preachers. That's that one there. And look at that. We get 4 pages. And then church councillors, elders, and all of those who take leadership in the church, it says here that it applies to, find it a minute, church councillors, elders, worship leaders, chairs of committees, team and activity leaders, but not exclusively. Any lay person who accepts a leadership role within a congregation, presbytery, synod, or assembly, but not to anyone who gets paid. How many pages do they get? How many pages do you get? You get 2 pages. Now, I'll come back to that in a minute. I was a member of the working party that wrote Nurses Board of Western Australia, Nurses Code of Practice Ethics. 3 pages. The print's quite small. And it's in a folder like that because we considered that 34,000 nurses in Western Australia wouldn't read 14 pages. They probably wouldn't even read 4 pages. And they certainly wouldn't read it in a format like that. So we tried to produce something that had some hope of being read and understood. Now, after it's taken over, we don't have the Nurses Board of WA anymore. It's a national one. And I looked it up. It's 22 pages. Who do you think reads that? When you're rushing around a busy ward, you want some guidance. Oh, it's on page 17. You might find it in the second column. So what I'm saying really is that these standards and codes of ethics like this, that administrations and bosses and boards write, they sometimes write it to cover their own backs. They know no one will read it, but it's there. I think it's very important that something is known and read. So our 2 pages here for lay leaders is getting closer to reality. It's probably the best one of the 3 because people, if they are given it, might read something like that. What about the Bible? All the books in the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament. Who's read the whole Bible? I haven't read a lot, but I know some people, a few people, who have. And so we have a lectionary, which over 3 years is supposed to churn through the important parts of the Bible, who decided they're important. That could be another sermon. But that's the idea, to take bite-sized chunks, and we're able to consider them as entities in themselves and look at them week by week, and maybe look at them privately as well. And there are other lectionaries and studies too that people can follow that guide us through the scriptures. Because the whole book is like the 22-page Nurse's Code of Ethics. Just to have it in my hand is not going to do me any good. I have to understand what it means. So it is in our codes of ethics within the church. The tenants living at the vineyard acted unethically, but the householders' actions were guided by an ethical approach, which was beyond the understanding of the tenants. So what of Christian codes of ethics? Often referred to, they apply to the church and to each one of us too. As the householder displayed human feelings for his tenants, so I believe that Christian ethics can owe as much to feeling as they do to thinking. They can owe as much to emotion as they can do to reason. Now, there is a famous occurrence that occurred in India, the siege of Lucknow. And that siege went on and on and on for weeks. And they were at the point of surrendering. We will surrender at dawn the next day. We'll throw ourselves upon the mercy of the rebel army. The rebel army are not shown much mercy anywhere else, not even to its own Indian people. And there was a young woman, pregnant she was too, Mary Mackenzie. And just before dawn, she said to the general in charge, "Don't surrender, help is coming." Well, we've been waiting months, and there's no help coming. The help is coming, the help is coming. I can feel that the help is coming. I have a feeling, I know help is coming. And because of her passion, he was moved to wait. And the best part of an hour later, in the far distance, coming from the far distance, beyond some rolling hills, just one or two sounds of the pipes. And the army came, and Lucknow was relieved. And they said to her, "How did you hear that?" And she said, "I heard it with my heart." And there's a poem written about more of feeling than of thinking, more of heart than of the mind. And I think that's the way with our ethical view of our Christian faith. It owes as much to emotion as to reason, as much to feeling as to thinking, to allow the Holy Spirit to enter into our thinking, into our emotions, and into the things within us that guide our behaviour. Christian ethical codes have some unique and varied features. God's commands relating to behaviour, the 10 Commandments, historical notions of right and wrong based upon them. We have a traditional, innate sense of the dignity and importance of the things of God and of human life itself. Unique elements are introduced by the person, the life, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. There are some elements to ponder. These are easy to understand as well. The unique elements introduced by Jesus Christ: love. His commandments: you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your strength. You shall love your neighbour as yourself. You shall love one another even as I have loved you, that you also shall love one another. That's love. Forgiveness. We know the accused heart was forgiven. Compassion. Lazarus was raised to life. Emotion and feeling. Jesus wept. Sense and instinct leading to proper action. And so the temple courtyard was cleansed of corruption. There is another thing which I think sets Christian ethical codes apart from other sets of standards, however laudable they may be, however worthy. All ethical standards recognise the past in coming to terms with managing the present. My experience in the health field, many of them do not address managing the future very well. They're found wanting. They have to be patched up. The gospel of Jesus Christ never needs patching up, never needs updating. It is eternal. Christian codes of ethics do recognise the future and the need to ensure that Christian heritage is passed on intact and powerful. Jesus lived, died, and he rose again. This means that God's gift of life belongs to every generation. We then are obliged to nurture the faith and prepare the road for those who will follow. The commandments of Jesus are true signposts to guide the way. Good friend, I'm building the bridge for him. Amen.